Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar. Today we're joined with Lisa Hendrickson, President of Spark City, and we're going to be talking about the 5 steps to supercharge results for the change agent entrepreneur. Now you may be wondering, what does that mean? And we're going to get to that in just a few minutes. Right now, while we're waiting for some other people to join the webinar, I'm just going to introduce myself and introduce Lisa, and by then, hopefully, everyone who wants to join will join, and we'll just jump right in. My name is Ariel Kranzow, and I'm the content manager for OnDeck. For those of you joining us who don't know what OnDeck is a small business lender. We help small businesses grow through the use of capital. And we're joined with Lisa Hendrickson, who is the president of Spark City, and she is an amazing small business knowledge base, and she'll tell you a little bit about her background and where she's from.
Thank you so much, Ariel. And listen, I love being here with OnDeck because small business owners are really some of my favorite people. And I feel a real kindred spirit with being with small business owners. So I'm looking forward to having this presentation be really powerful for you. And really, I wish for you to have 2018 be your best year ever. So as Ariel said, my name is Lisa Hendrickson. I'm a serial entrepreneur, business strategist, and I'm president of Spark City, where we work with purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are building companies that make a positive impact. Our work lives at the intersection of personal success and small business growth. Do you want to wait a little bit more for some more people to come, or are we ready to...
No, you know what? I think let's just get started. People who are on time are on time.
Okay, that's perfect.
So let's just jump right in here. And one of the first things you talk about are that entrepreneurs are natural change agents. What do you mean by that?
So one of the great things about entrepreneurs is that entrepreneurs live in a world of ideas. And so we imagine usually 2 different places. One is, how do I solve a problem better than it's being solved now? And number 2, how do I change things so that I can make an environment for what I aspire to, or for what my customers or clients aspire to? And just that natural questioning about building something else makes change be part of the essence of what we do as entrepreneurs. So change from what the status quo is part of the entrepreneurial journey. And so really key to the entrepreneurial journey for each one of us is, how do we act as change agents for our own companies and for the people that we're serving?
So when you're talking about change and the possibility of change, what do you suggest in terms of how do you get from where we are now as a business, as business owners, as people, to where we want to go in the future?
Right. So those are great questions, Ariel. Again, coming from that vision of the future is what drives so many of us. We see a picture inside our mind's eye and say, that's the thing that we're going to build. And so we oftentimes have such a strong view of what that possibility is. It has us go through the obstacles that come in our way of making change in order to fulfill on that. There's a great book by a business coach named Marshall Goldsmith. One of the things that he says is, what got you here won't get you there. And I love that saying, yeah, because we have a certain impetus about change that got us through the beginning of the business. But then leveling up to where it is that we want to go usually requires us to have next level skills. So we have to be fueled by the possibility of what we see for ourselves in order to travail through those obstacles that get us to that next level.
Okay, so something that you talk about is, you talk about Kool-Aid and the color of Kool-Aid, and sometimes like mixing all the colors. And what do you mean by that?
So I love the idea of Kool-Aid, and we've all heard this. The idea in startup is you have to drink your own Kool-Aid. You have to actually believe what it is that you're making, and I totally agree with that viewpoint. You must be, as the key entrepreneur, the visionary in chief, believe in exactly what it is that you set out to do and how you set out to do it. Now, in this world of disruptive innovation and change, oftentimes we need to make a pivot. And one of the sticking points that happens for entrepreneurs is we get so deeply invested in our way, the first way, and that we know it's going to work out in the long haul, that sometimes it stops us from being able to take the pivot, move to another direction. And so, what I mean by Kool-Aid is yes, you drank your own Kool-Aid from the beginning, and now maybe there's another color Kool-Aid that you need to buy into, right? It doesn't mean you have to cannibalize the first bit.
I love that comparison.
Right? It just means that there's another level in which you then can believe in. It's not disavowing your first viewpoint, but it's including a second that will help you overcome those obstacles, or maybe that the market has changed since you started the business.
That makes a ton of sense. And I just love being able to relate something so complicated and so scary like pivoting your business to something as simple as Kool-Aid. So part of getting from point A to point B is actually creating the path to get there. And when you're thinking about road mapping and getting from point A to point B, or maybe from point B to point C, where do you actually go and how do you actually create that plan? What do you do for that?
So that's a great question, Ariel. One of the things that I notice is that companies get really bogged down in their planning process. Either they go too far down the rabbit hole in the planning process and that they can't really see the big picture to make that pivot or make that change. And I like the idea of road mapping to help us be able to solidify the vision. And what road mapping does is, instead of being able to assign roles and goals and all of those things that happen when we do a traditional project plan, we're able to take the vision and then see action steps for how do we need to fulfill on this without filling out the rest of the plan. So using a roadmap is a way to map out what that journey is going to be without knowing the exact resources that you'll be using or an exact timeline about those things. It will be able to help you figure out, will this actually lead me down a path that's going to work? Am I missing something in order to be able to fulfill on it? And it's a really quick and easy way of doing it rather than going deeply, deeply into the project plan that we have oftentimes for the year.
That makes a lot of sense. And what's really the first step? Like, how do you decide where you're gonna go? How do you do that?
Right. So when we want to make next level changes inside of the business, the first thing to do is a current state assessment. It seems almost antithetical to do that, but understanding deeply about where we are and why we're in that place will lead us to the right questions to ask, right? Project planning isn't so much a destination. It is asking and answering questions that has us figure out, right, the little breadcrumbs that take us along the pathway to build the company. And so having a current state assessment means I understand my current results, where we are, how many we have on staff, who's doing what. Were we able to achieve what it was that we set out to achieve in the first place? And there's real power in not telling the story. I know we get caught up in corporate storytelling about how this got to being, but when we do a current state assessment, we just want to be with, we hit our number or we didn't hit our number, right? And the story may or may not really provide a whole lot, right? Just being able to go, well, we hit 75% of our goal and we wanted 100% of our goal. right? And then we can see where these efforts have led us. So really understanding where we are currently will really impact and empower us to make that pivot to the next level.
Okay, so once you've defined success and once you've figured out, or not defined success, but when you actually assessed your business and you figured out where you currently are, how you got there, how do you then go about choosing the destination? Because I feel like you probably need to know next where you're going. How do you then define success?
That is an awesome question. One of the things I really like to tell entrepreneurs is that you must have a personal definition of success. And why? Because there's so much information out there that makes us think that we want something. Like we think we might want the unicorn, except that nobody really highlights how difficult, how hard that road is, what it may cost you out of your life, your personal life, all these other things. And usually small business owners are in it because it's a lifestyle choice that they see. We have lifestyle businesses, which mean we're choosing to participate in a particular community. We want to have a family business where our family participates, right? Those are the kinds of businesses we have to have our own personal definition of success. Some people it might mean I'm home for supper at 6:30 every single day. That may mean success for you. I'm not quite sure, but you have to decide that. And building your business around what makes you feel successful is really key, because no matter how successful you get out in the world, if it's not giving you what makes you feel successful, you will never feel successful, no matter how much society tells you that that's a success you want.
It's really interesting hearing you talk about what you personally want as a business owner for success. My husband's a business owner, and he is constantly thinking about and moving the bar further and how to push the envelope. And it's, as someone that's been working with small business owners for years, it's so interesting to be on the other side of it and see the back end and see the engine running, because the definition of success moves every time you hit your next goalpost. And whether or not family is involved changes on a on a year-to-year basis of, do you think I can be home by 6 p.m.? Is that something that you want? Most business owners, when they're starting out, that's not even close to an option. They work 24/7, and building your lifestyle into the success of your actual business is really important in order to maintain, I think, sanity, because you can't run on all your engines forever, and you need to be able to balance, have that work-life balance that people who have 9 to 5s have. And I think that's a really important point that you made.
Yeah, so that's a great point too. So I want to say, so people who are in startup, people who are in the young years of their business, yes, they're working, 100% of the time to like really make that work. But by the time people have been in business 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and are ready to make a pivot inside of the business model, that looks different. A lot of the groundwork is there. The operations have been put in place. You have long-term employees who can, oversee things. When you start and you're the founder, it's all on your shoulders. You don't have people, right, who you can count on, that you trust to be able to fulfill on taking care of the customers, or being able to run the business the way it's supposed to while you're gone. But people who've been in business for 7 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years can reevaluate and say, now that I've gotten to a certain place, what is success for me? Does it mean I retire at X age? Does it mean I open another location? Does it mean that I can find business systems and build that in, that I don't have to be at the business except for a small amount of time? However you, right, see fit. That is what will drive success for you.
Yeah. And I think this sort of brings us into the next point, which is the business purpose and figuring out why you're doing what you're doing and where you want that to go. And can you share a little bit about your thoughts on that subject.
Yeah, one of the things that I find is really important when we've established the business is starting to really tell the story to not only attract employees and customers, but really to be grounded in why are you doing this business? Now, anyone who says, I do a small business simply for the money, should get a job, right? Because
Absolutely.
it's a difficult pathway that we've set ourselves on. But there's something really deeply driving us that has us do what it is that we do. And again, when we're in the business 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, our why gets really salient, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get a real clarity, and telling that story has real power in it. And it has our customers and our employees really appreciate that. And we get to have a different perspective when people understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think understanding why you're doing what you're doing is something that at OnDeck we talk about all the time, which is, you know, you might have this goal in mind, but why are you doing it? Why are you thinking about it this way? And as your goals and in your business or even in, how you deal with other people and your employees is really something that once you get that clarity, it makes a lot of the other decisions a lot easier, like um, picking goals and reaching them and deciding what the right outcome is for that situation or that moment in time or that quarter.
Yes. And that was why I introduced myself the way I did. Our company, we work with purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are out to make a positive impact for society. That's something that really speaks to me. As somebody who's been a serial entrepreneur, that is what has distilled down for me over the number of different businesses that I've done, whether it was from a venture-backed tech startup or the bootstrap company that I did, our furnishings company that I did with my husband. At this point, where the why is really impacting and empowering people who want to have a positive impact on society is really my why. I really want to do that, right? And telling that story has a lot of power for the people who I work with and the people who are our clients and customers.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to when you understand that as an employee of a company or as the partner in a business, it makes it really easy to understand the success of the business and to be excited about the success of the business when you understand the purpose and you understand why things are the way they are. And I think in small businesses, it's sometimes it's harder and sometimes it's easier because if there aren't a ton of employees, you have a more of a personal interaction with your employees, but making your employees care about your business the way that you, the entrepreneur, care about your business is something really hard to do. And do you have any, I think, suggestions for business owners watching to make those decisions and to be kind of transparent? Like, how do you suggest that people go about talking to their employees about that and bringing the fire where it needs to be?
So that's such a great question, and that is what we struggle with as small business owners oftentimes. So if you've seen any studies, you see the level of disengagement people have with a business mission and things like that. And what I really try to get across are some tools for people, one, to make a really good decision in our stead and be excited about it. So there's two things. One is setting up a criteria that people can make decisions that's connected to the why. And what I mean by that is, so everybody talks about quality. Let's take it out of the why for a second. Okay. Everyone believes in like having a high quality product, right? And everyone can agree with that. But how do we define a high quality product? Does it mean if we have clothes that there's a certain level of cotton that we have, or the way stitching looks, or if we have furniture that there's a certain grade of wood that we would use in that furniture. How do we actually define quality? And when we can teach and train people how to actually fulfill on what it is that we see called quality, then people are able to step into our vision and our why and say, here's the big idea, this is how we do it, this is how this is defined to do it. And I think there's real power in that. The second thing I want to say to help people be connected to business goals and business vision and mission is set up goals for the individual. Let's say that person always wanted to run a marathon. Let's say part of you being able to start the new year is saying, we are running a marathon ourselves in this business. This is what we're trying to achieve. And by the way, Ariel, we're going to go and support you in your marathon journey. So Ariel gets to go and train for her marathon while we have, oh, she's like, no, I'm not.
No,
But
never.
while we're,
She's done it though. She's run a marathon.
yeah, I have. But put those two things together. So there's real personal connection with the business outcome and the personal that people want together. I think that's really powerful.
It's really, I think I can't even like put that all together. You talk about like the magic number of 3, and maybe by you explaining that, we can kind of put a bunch of the pieces together.
Right. So I love the magic number 3. Why? Because entrepreneurs are so next shiny penny, and we give people too much information, probably like I just gave you now, Ariel. But we want to have so much happen all at the same time. And in order for us to really be focused and have change that we can have throughout the business, I say you have 3 major goals for a year. And then you break down those goals to have 3 goals that are going to happen every half year. 3 goals that you're going to have happen in the quarter. 3 goals that you're going to have happen that month. And if you just continue on a pathway of 3, people can keep that in top of mind and they can accomplish it. If you are doing things that are more than 3, people are going to be drowning in the idea of all the change they're going to have to make, and it will disempower the change that you want to see and disempower your people.
I think that doing things that are bite-sized and actionable really help, and the number 3, and that it's such a manageable number for everybody, and I think people have that number in their head all the time. When you make bullet points, you make 3. Make sure you had enough to say, but not too much that you're overwhelming everybody. And I think that that's a really good practice to have, is to make things, enough to do, but not too much that you're overwhelming everybody. And talking about numbers, it brings us to what I want to talk about next, is about KPIs and how do you measure your success, and how do you choose what to measure, and how do you take those numbers and make something actionable out of it?
Great. So there's this adage that says you cannot improve that which you do not measure. And
I love that.
So that's why we started with a current state assessment, right? Because if we don't know where we are, how do we manage change to where we want to go? When we can say we are going to increase sales by 20% in the next 90 days, right? Those are actionable, measurable items where people can then say, okay, well, if our current level of sales took 2 months to do, and we want to be able to increase that, how many more resources, how much more time do we have to spend, right? You can break down those KPIs in order to take action. And that's what we want to do with measuring. We want to take numbers out of the esoteric, right? Because if we just put out numbers and we don't give anyone any clue about where we're going to go, we want to have numbers be actionable. Numbers tell a story. Instead of just being a two-dimensional spreadsheet that's filled with numbers, right?
Oh boy.
It tells us, right? Numbers can tell us a story, like we'll increase sales by 20%. I will make sure I um, do 7 different marketing sales calls this week, because if I do 7 by the end of the 90-day period, I will net out, right? You want to be able to have KPIs that are actionable. And anything you want to change, like customer service KPIs, or not only just financial or sale KPIs, customer happiness, right? How do we measure happiness? You send out surveys, you ask people, you can do non-sales calls to your customers, things like that. But you won't improve that where you don't put a number and you don't measure.
So, as you're measuring, when you're dealing with your employees or you're just dealing with yourself, like, what is your idea in terms of, I think people, at least I'm very visual, and I think when you have a visual representation of numbers, that helps. Like, I know that you talk a lot about that. Can you expand on your visualizing displays and numbers?
Right. So some of this is going to sound like being in elementary school, but I believe deeply in putting out a calendar or some kind of visual display and giving yourself gold stars or silver stars for actually accomplishing something, right? We always work for what that little reward is. And we do want to acknowledge the reward that we have. Because if we take one small step every day, by the end of the month, you'll have 30 stars. You would have changed your behavior, right? And we want all of our employees, if we're in a program together, to change their behavior towards that new routine, right? That new outcome that we want to generate. And so we want to acknowledge it along the way. I know it sounds, elementary, and it is. It is. We are those children from kindergarten.
But everyone likes gold stars. So.
Everyone likes gold stars, right? Everybody does. And we're just generally competitive by nature. People are going to appreciate that they have that visual display. And whatever it is, whether you put a stuffed animal on somebody's desk for the week, that was the rock star of it, right? It moves from desk to desk. Silly as that may seem, people get very happy that they were the ones to, and it's not like they're bragging, because they're not. They just have that stuffed animal or that acknowledgement or the little trophy of the week that gets to sit on their desk that week.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's that's really like a far out sort of funny example of it, but just showing, even just the simple act of showing that you appreciate somebody and showing that you care. Last month we did a survey of over 500 small business owners talking about bonuses at the end of the year, and something like 92% of small business owners give out bonuses. Now, small businesses aren't multi-million, billion-dollar companies. Some of them are, but the vast majority of at least the people we deal with on a regular basis aren't. And even just being able for small business owners to show appreciation is so valuable to their employees, and that 92% of them do it, even though at some point they're really reaching into their own pockets to give it out, and it's not some amorphous pot of gold that the company has. And so I think it's, it gets sort of reinvigorates your employees and gets people excited about it and gets everyone believing in what you're doing.
Agreed. I totally agree with that, and it's even if you give $100, $200 to people, it just is an acknowledgement that you're appreciated. And hey, this is a holiday season, and hopefully this will help you in between here and there. It doesn't, and it doesn't have to always be something so massive that it can be just the acknowledgement of it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. And so we're getting a little bit tight on time, and I just want you have some great tips on what you can actually do this weekend to get going on your planning. 2018, we're already almost a month into it, or exactly a month
Right.
into it. And so, how do we get things on their way?
Yeah. So I'm going to say something crazy and radical. Shut your phone off. Which nobody wants to do anymore. But I promise you, if you have quiet, thoughtful space, that the phone isn't buzzing, that you don't see email, that you don't see your social media, that you don't get an alert from the New York Times or some other, that although we love the New York Times, right? But just to sit quietly and really ask yourself the question, what is my vision for success? What do I want to accomplish this year? What's the pivot that I need to make inside of the business? Asking and answering those questions, being able to do a current state assessment. This is what we produced last year. This is what I'd really like to produce this year, right? Put together KPIs. What are we going to measure? How do we improve this? What would happen if we actually did that? And start the roadmap. You can do this relatively quickly if you have some uninterrupted time. And for the people who plan, the people who plan have an overall much better result than the people who do not plan. So, take the time to sit and ask yourself those deep questions about the business, that when we're actively engaged in the business, we don't have time to pay attention to those things. Shut the phone off, spend some time really focused on what it is that you're out to produce, and I promise you, you will come up with some very interesting things for your business in the new year.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with us. We're going to start Q&A, and there have just been a bunch of questions that have been rolling in as the webinar has been going. So I'm just going to take a second and look at some. So just give me 1 second. The first question that we have is, what are the next best steps? I know we just went over the things that you can do this weekend, but what are the next best steps in terms of moving forward?
Right. So once you've done the work over the weekend to roadmap, see where you are, see where you want to go, that's when you start putting together a plan, and especially a communication plan to tell your people what is it that you want to have happen in 2018, and be able to show them a map. By the end of 2018, this is what we are out to achieve. This is our high-level goals for 6 months. These are our high-level goals for 3 months, right? And this is what I want to have happen now. Ask them the questions. What do you want to achieve for yourself in 2018? And let's tie those things together between our outcomes that we're trying to produce and what you want to do. It will shift the relationship that you have from people who come and maybe are just tired of the business or just punching the clock, I'm here because I need a paycheck, to what do I have at stake for it? Your next best steps are really starting to implement this in the business. Once you know where you want to go, take that first step to implement in the business.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Our next question is, in terms of marketing, how do you fit marketing into this plan?
That's such a great idea. One of the things that I really like is doing an annual marketing plan and communication plan. So when you get what the definition of success is, what is the change you're out to make, start communicating that on a weekly or a monthly message, depending upon which channel that you're going to speak to your potential customers and your customers to. When we start marketing, what I'd like for you to think about, instead of calling it marketing, call it what's the change we're out to make, right? So people think, right, we think that marketing might be connected with advertising, getting our name out there. What I really like is a much more personal approach. And if we're really there, like small business owners are for their customers, and really sharing about that change that they're out to be with in the world, promise you, you will attract more customers, more people who are interested in being part of that same change. That's what we really want to talk about, especially when we're making that pivot to next level results.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is our last question because we're really running out of time. But what is the someone asked about, and a couple people here have actually asked about challenges. So you've made your plan and now you've hit some sort of roadblock in that plan. How do you either incorporate into your plan something about the roadblock that you can hit, or when you hit your roadblock, what do you suggest in terms of moving around it or jumping over it?
Such a great question. You know, one of the things that I like to talk about in the seminars that I teach is it's the Marines methodology, right? And so one of the things that Marines say when they come into a new environment is they improvise, adapt, and overcome. And with any obstacle that we have, it becomes an obstacle because it doesn't fit into our plan. We don't know how to deal with it, right? So we have to be able to be flexible. We have to improvise. What does that look like? We have to adapt ourselves, our company, our resources, and we will overcome what that is, right? And so from a high level, if we have a process to think about obstacles and have that in place, that's a really powerful way to share also with your employees when they come up against obstacles. How might they look at this method to be able to overcome what that obstacle is?
Great. I think that's some really great advice. And for all of you who joined us today, I think you are really lucky that you got to hear from Lisa. She's amazing. She's spoken at tons of conferences, Inc. 500. It's just a pleasure to have you here, and thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. If you have written in a question and it hasn't been answered in our super short Q&A, we will email you and with the answer to your question. For the rest of you, thank you again so much for joining us. If you want to watch a replay of this, you can go to ondeck.com/resources. There you will find other articles, previous webinars that we've done, and we hope you have a great rest of your day and look forward to seeing you at one of our future webinars.